While assisting my former spouse with the relocation of her belongings, I discovered her old mobile phone. I informed her of the discovery and inquired as to whether she wished to retain it. She gave me the green light to proceed. I proceeded to discard it. However, I was intrigued by the rationale behind its concealment in an old purse. After charging it, I connected it to my laptop and began examining the files. To my surprise, I discovered several video clips that I was previously unaware of. During our marriage, my wife never made videos, she only took pictures. These videos spanned a duration of between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. What I observed was both shocking and, to some extent, unsurprising. They depicted my wife in the company of one video could be identified as having been taken at a girls' night out with 2 younger men. There were others showing her engaged in oral sex or having sexual intercourse. This led to the conclusion that she would leave at odd times or come home late from a friend's place. Consequently, I felt compelled to get a DNA test to ensure that my children were actually biologically mine. For the update, my oldest son and the youngest daughter and my youngest son share a perfect match to my DNA, however, my middle son shares some similarities but not an exact match. There are resemblances but not identical. She has no knowledge of my decision to proceed with a DNA test and denies any and all allegations of infidelity. Consequently, I approached my best friend's wife, who was in a relationship with my ex during that period. She confirmed that my ex did have a physical relationship with another man. At the time of conception of our youngest child, my ex-partner was involved in an intimate relationship with another man. This occurred after a baseball game when we were preparing to return home. However, we were invited to stay for drinks. I was exhausted and the baby was fussy, so I decided to go home and left my ex with my best friend's wife to have a few drinks. This is when I discovered that my ex had a major crush on my cousin. They had a few drinks and, as the night went on, the crowd thinned. As the evening progressed, the number of attendees dwindled and the time grew later. Eventually, only my ex, my cousin, and her friend remained. My friend mentioned that she needed to retrieve something from the field and departed to do so. Upon her return, she discovered that my ex and cousin were no longer present. She checked his truck but found nothing. She then noticed that the truck was slightly moving. Curious, she peeked into the bed of the truck and discovered them engaged in a passionate embrace. His hand was under her shirt. My friend attempted to remain concealed and swiftly retreated beneath the bleachers. They arose and he pulled her to the edge of the tailgate. She stated that he initiated this act while she struggled with his zipper. My ex made a remark indicating that he should duck after pulling out his tool, suggesting that his cousin was not particularly endowed. She inquired about his skin because she had never observed it before. She proceeded to perform oral sex on him for several minutes before. Standing up and bending over into his truck bed, he entered her and began having intercourse at a moderate pace. My friend was both shocked and aroused by what she observed. She noted that my ex was clearly enjoying it, based on her moaning and her response to him. She also mentioned that my cousin was a rather large man. They both reached their climax and he left a few drops on her pants. She even gave them to him as a keepsake. After donning her garments, my associate proceeded to her vehicle. My former partner eventually returned and she inquired as to their whereabouts. He replied that they had been traversing the baseball field. This occurrence coincides with the conception of my son, which would explain why our genetic profiles do not align. Do you have any counsel or suggestions for me? Music is second story, I must provide some context. When I initially encountered my future spouse, she would often bring up her former partner. My then wife would frequently bring up her former partner. On our first date, my then girlfriend received a call from her boyfriend, who demanded that she pay her share of the phone bill or he would cut her off. She would often tell me stories about how he mistreated her. He was a heavy drinker who could not hold a steady job and constantly offended her. She despised him and wanted him out of her life forever. Fast forward to our marriage, which I still remember with joy. I recall her whispering, "Oh," when I realized I was gripping her hands too tightly during the ceremony. Everything for her, she lacked a driver's license, so I would always pick her up from work on my off days. I would also take her to work. She often asked me for money to buy marijuana, which I could not use due to my military service. Whenever she needed cigarettes, I would buy her 2 packs, even though she said one was enough. I have vivid memories of gently stroking her hair behind her ear and feeling a sense of peace on the day we got married. I removed her from her ex's phone plan and put her on mine. She never contributed anything, not for gas, rent, or Wi-Fi. I paid for her phone bill in full and even drove from Virginia to New York in just 9 hours, fueled by caffeine and Adderall, so that she could see her family after years of being apart. I enabled her to live her life and did my best to help her become a responsible person and get her back on track. She thought she owed $2,000 in student loans, but later we discovered that due to her loan, the outstanding balance had increased to $22,000 due to the accumulation of interest and other charges. I informed her that I would provide financial assistance when the time came. A few days before her birthday in December, I observed that she was attempting to conceal a texting application from me. She sent me a text message requesting that I take her to the emergency room, where she was diagnosed with the flu that night while under the influence of medication. I took possession of her mobile phone and examined it. I discovered a text message to her former partner expressing her longing for him and her desire to resume their relationship. I was enraged and, for the first time in our entire relationship, I raised my voice at her. The following morning, I reprimanded her for her actions and she promised that her text to her former partner was not significant. She apologized for her deceit and asserted that she was no longer interested in him. I was naive to believe her, but we reconciled and proceeded to move forward. However, I still felt culpable for my initial doubt. I was driving her around to take care of various tasks before her birthday, including paying for her nails and hair to be done. I then checked my banking app and noticed that on her account, we had separate accounts. I was a joint owner on hers, but she was not on mine. There were 2 Uber charges and a charge at a 7-Eleven convenience store. The Uber charges were for 11 near her ex-partner's place of residence. When I asked her about them, she became defensive, claiming that they were for a friend and that the location sometimes shows up as near his place when it is actually near hers. I was foolish to believe her, but I became more cautious. I asked her to look me in the eyes and promised that she had not been to his place. She swore that she had not been there later that day. I asked her if she could show me her Uber history. She became increasingly defensive, accusing me of being paranoid, a trait she attributed to me as well. I conducted an investigation and discovered that her Uber history indicated that she had indeed visited his residence. I confronted her in a calm manner, informing her of my awareness of her visit. Instead of engaging in a calm conversation, she became enraged and demanded to know why I had accessed her Uber history. She expressed her desire for a divorce. We did not speak for approximately a week, but eventually we reconciled. She swore to me that nothing had occurred during her visit to his residence. During her visit to his residence between that time and last week, our relationship appeared to be amicable. However, I observed that she was still connected with him on Facebook. I requested that she block him, which she did. Nevertheless, I was aware that when one blocks or unblocks another's posts, one's own posts are occasionally tagged in the process, resulting in their brief reappearance before disappearing again. I distinctly recall a day when I requested to view her blocked list while we were parked. She exited the vehicle, went behind it, and returned. Upon my request to view the list, I was astonished at my own inaction and disbelief at her assumption that I would be deceived by such a transparent ploy. However, the situation underwent a significant transformation last week, following the incident in December. I had activated parental controls on my phone account and added a tracker, enabling me to monitor her daily movements. She was unaware of this due to her expressed disinclination towards any form of location tracking. However, this presented an opportunity for me to implement this tracking after finishing a 24-hour shift on Friday and Saturday. On the hour shift between Friday and Saturday, I sent her a text message to inquire about her activities and returned home. She did not respond to any of my messages, so I checked the tracker. She was at her ex-partner's residence. I immediately jumped out of bed and frantically searched for my clothes, then rushed over there with the intention of confronting her. She claimed that she had gone out the previous night with a friend and was staying over at her friend's place, not the ex-partner. I knew the friend in question. I will never forget the moment she stepped out. I was leaning against a tree outside his apartment, waiting for her. I called her to tell her that she needed to come home immediately so that we could spend the day together to make up for me working 24 hours on Valentine's Day. The first thing I did was yell, "Staying over at a friend's place, huh?" She screamed, "Duck," and asked me for a ride home. She swore that nothing happened and that she just wanted to see. I demanded immediate access to the apartment and her ring. I gave her until Thursday to return the phone I had paid for, and I never asked for a cent back. Later, she admitted that something had happened and that it had also occurred in December. I was devastated. She told me that her infidelity was due to her loss of attraction for me. She mentioned that I had been with her for 3 years and that he had been doing things to her. My body, which I am unable to adequately describe, was the subject of her criticism. She also made a comment about not liking the way I smelled, which contradicted what she had always told me before. This situation was confusing. She claimed that she stopped being attracted to me after her encounter in December and said that she lost attraction to herself and me. I deduced that she was lying about the smell and could not admit that she was. Nevertheless, she did mention that she liked how I cared about her and held her hand all the time. Later, her ex sent me a message on Facebook with just XD. I kept texting her continuously, telling her that I forgive her and want to have a life together. However, she kept refusing, saying that I deserve someone better and that she's trash. I am aware that she has a tendency to engage in self-harm. She attempts to justify her actions by claiming that she is of lesser value. This is a manipulative tactic that she employs to make herself feel better about herself. I have not initiated contact since then because I no longer desire a relationship with her. Our lives have become completely separate. She has not lived with me, so she must choose between remaining with her ex or returning to the place she previously occupied. I have the phone and am working on removing myself as a joint owner of her account. I can still track her spending, and although she received $600 on Thursday, she is already overdrawn as of today. This is largely due to Uber rides to and from work and likely also to food and marijuana. I am at a loss as to how to feel about this. I had assumed that I would be the one to help her overcome her issues, as I had done everything for her and never laid a hand on her. I had always tried to push her to become a better person. She previously asserted that I was a more virtuous individual than her former partner. However, I am uncertain as to whether I can still believe this. I believe that I have moved on from this relationship, but I am unsure if this is entirely accurate. I do not feel any romantic attraction towards her, and if she were to ask me to resume our relationship, I would decline. I would only consider rekindling our relationship if she were to call me at 3 a.m. and admit that she had made a mistake, apologize, and ask me to take her back. Even contemplating this scenario makes me question whether I have truly moved on. I am uncertain as to whether I have fully recovered from this experience. I have an update to the post I made yesterday. I contacted her one more time after learning that she had changed her Facebook relationship status to widowed. I messaged her, stating that I was not dead. I also sent her a picture of a letter I had received stating that our tax return had been used to pay off her student loans. I am planning to visit the IRS. At some point this week, I will be seeking to recover my share. Let us now turn to the background of this story. I am a 27-year-old man who, like many others, grew up with the belief that there was one perfect person out there for me. This is the idea of the soulmate. When I was 19, I met a woman named Bree. We were introduced through mutual friends while I was serving in the army. Bree was attractive, had a unique personality, and seemed like a genuinely good person. One of her friends, whom we shall refer to here as Sam, thought it would be a good idea for us to be a couple. The reason for this is unclear, but I was attracted to Bree and she seemed interested in me too. Bree was visiting Sam for a few days and I had just returned from a leave in my hometown. It was therefore inevitable that we would meet. We all went out for lunch together. The group consisted of me, Bree, Sam, and Sam's husband, whom we shall refer to here as Jim. The relationship did not progress to any significant degree, however, once Bree returned home, she initiated contact via Facebook and the two began to develop a strong connection. After approximately 3 weeks of communication, she posed a peculiar question: "What would you do if I were pregnant?" It is important to note that at the time, Bree was engaged in a tumultuous phase of her life, engaging in multiple sexual relationships. I only discovered this information much later in the relationship. Additionally, she had a boyfriend at the time. Just a month prior to our meeting, I had been adopted. Consequently, the prospect of assuming parental responsibility for a child did not appear to be a significant challenge. My response was perceived as appropriate at the time. I would love the child as if it were my own. However, it subsequently emerged that she was exhibiting numerous indications of pregnancy. Approximately a week later, she undertook a pregnancy test, which returned a positive result. I remained committed to my initial pledge to care for this child. Nevertheless, there were a 3-month interval elapsed between this revelation and her decision to fly out to be with me. During this period, she exhibited a high degree of instability, attempting to ascertain whether the man she believed to be the father would assume responsibility for the child. However, he did not do so, and she ultimately chose me instead. In retrospect, I recognize that remaining with her was a poor decision. I was naive, deeply in love, and genuinely believed that she was the one. I also believed that things would eventually work out. I even married her with the intention of having the army cover the birth expenses. However, despite this, the situation did not improve. I will now attempt to elucidate the circumstances that transpired. It was during our second year of marriage that I first observed a peculiar phenomenon. There was a gentleman, whom I shall refer to as Ron, who was consistently liking and commenting on the posts my wife made, particularly those that featured our daughter. This behavior prompted me to raise concerns, as by this point I had already left. The individual in question was a member of the military and was employed in a security capacity. One evening, while I was working at a nightclub, my instincts prompted me to investigate further. I am not prone to acting on mere suspicion. I require tangible evidence to substantiate my concerns. Given that my shift would conclude at approximately 4 a.m. and she would be asleep, I saw an opportunity. Every night, she would leave her laptop on the living room couch downstairs before going to bed. I devised a plan to gain access to her account. Upon returning home, I proceeded to the couch and discovered the laptop. I attempted to guess the password, and to my surprise, it was our daughter's birth year. I immediately accessed her Facebook account. I then proceeded to check her messages, where I discovered a 6-month-long exchange with a man named Ron. Some of the messages were flirtatious in nature, and they even discussed my perceived inadequacies as a man. However, the most distressing aspect was the discovery that she believed he was the biological father and that I attempted to involve him in our lives by scrolling through the messages until I could no longer bear to do so. I then proceeded to take the laptop upstairs and place it in front of her, with the screen glaring at her face as she slowly woke up. I informed her that we would be discussing this matter in the morning and then returned downstairs. She awoke at approximately 7 o'clock hours but did not descend to the ground floor until 9 o'clock hours. It would appear that she was anticipating that I would be asleep on the couch when she finally confronted me. She attempted to dismiss the matter as merely friendly discourse and asserted that it was not technically cheating. I refuted this assertion and made it clear that if I am presented with a similar situation in the future, I will take the necessary steps to leave the relationship. When I initially became aware of the situation, I made the decision to withdraw from college and seek employment in my field. I ensured that any credit accounts or assets were in her name. I began discussing the potential benefits of relocating to a more economically advantageous area. It took approximately 2 years to persuade her to accept the idea, during which time I transferred all assets and accounts to her name. In May of the following year, we relocated to my hometown. I also discussed the relative economic advantages of my hometown, which I felt would be a better place for us to live. After 2 years of persuasion, she finally agreed to the plan. I made sure that none of our assets or credit accounts were in my name. In 6 months, we were ready to move to my hometown. We arrived in May, and the following month, I sent her back home. I was aware of her intentions and the identity of her accomplice. We had met a man through Sam on the day prior to our departure. I could discern her interest in him immediately. 3 weeks after her visit, she began to display peculiar behavior, prioritizing other commitments over mine and becoming distant. I had spent 2 years meticulously planning the circumstances for her departure. It was now time for her to act on her own volition. I ensured that I was unemployed and without assets, returning to my family for support. I persisted until she admitted to infidelity, which resulted in the breakdown of our relationship. I terminated all financial support. All the funds going into our joint account were expended and the account was emptied in order to file for divorce, given that I had no financial resources. She was therefore unable to claim half of the account balance. I was unemployed and therefore unable to provide her with alimony. Furthermore, all financial assets were in her name, which meant that, despite my own financial responsibilities, I was unable to provide her with any financial support. Despite my efforts to provide for her and our child, the divorce proceedings lasted for an inordinate length of time, which negatively impacted her credit rating. I made significant financial contributions and endured numerous personal sacrifices to raise our daughter, yet she ultimately suffered the most. I am currently thriving professionally and am gratified by the recognition I receive for my contributions. While marriage is not a priority for me at this stage in my life, I am open to the possibility of future relationships. There are numerous women who are interested in me. My life is currently going well. I still stay in touch with the daughter, and Bree occasionally attempts to flirt with me in the hope of getting me back. I am the only father figure the child has known, and I have no intention of relinquishing that role, despite the emotional difficulties it presents. It is tempting to resume the relationship with the intention of spending more time with the child. However, it is evident that this would be a suboptimal decision. There are superior alternatives and it would be unwise to embark on this course of action again. Foreign story, we have been married for 7 years and together for a total of 17 years. We have 2 wonderful children, aged 6 and 4. My family comprises a 7-year-old boy with autism and a 4-year-old girl. I am the primary caregiver for my children. I was a full-time housewife, responsible for the care of my children and the maintenance of the household. I undertook the cleaning, laundry and grocery shopping. My ex-husband did not contribute to these tasks, which was frustrating as he would finish eating and simply leave his plate on the table. We argued about this and he eventually started putting his plate in the sink. I worked just as many hours as my ex-husband, but I also undertook additional tasks. Fortunately, my parents were able to assist me. It is important to understand the load I carry so that they can help me out. My ex dislikes them, but he does not hesitate to use them and treat us like maids. He is from Pakistan and I am not. Things were not great at the beginning, but over time, they changed. He refuses to do any housework, he never cleans, and he expects me to change his bed sheets once a week. He wants everything to be clean, including the bathroom, but he will not lift a finger to do it himself. The phrase, "we need to," is used to convey the necessity of action. In this case, it is employed to indicate the necessity of working as much as possible to secure the future of my son and to cover the associated costs. Autism is a costly medical condition, particularly in the context of the necessity for ABA therapy, which is not covered by insurance. Consequently, the majority of expenses are borne by the family. While I am working to earn a living, I do not even purchase lunch because I am attempting to save every penny for my children. I have discovered that my husband has changed his schedule and is leaving the house shortly after I leave for work. This is problematic because our arrangement was that one of us would always be home for our son. Fortunately, my husband is aware of this and has not yet taken any further action. The parents of the children in question were aware of the situation and were willing to assist, but there had been an agreement that one of them would be home for the children. It was only after discovering that the other parent was having an affair that the full extent of the situation became apparent. There had been changes in the behavior of the other parent, including frequent arguments, a lack of interest in spending time with the children, and a general sense of distance. At one point, the other parent suggested that the marriage was only in name and that they were not actually married. In the interest of the children, he desired that we maintain a friendship, yet not be legally married. He would leave and return home solely to sleep at night. As my son has autism, he previously slept with my former spouse. He even attempted to train my son to sleep independently. For a period of 1 year, he was going to an expensive hotel every week with a 403. He would purchase luxury items for her, such as a Burberry bag, and even provide her with financial assistance to purchase appliances. I discovered this information because he never locked his phone, but suddenly he began keeping it locked and on him at all times. He was constantly texting on it whenever I texted or called him. He would not respond or answer at all. Eventually, he expressed his desire for a divorce, citing his desire to be with this Brazilian woman, whom he had been in contact with via text messages and phone calls. It is important to note that she is already married and engaging in an extramarital affair with her husband. Furthermore, she does not desire to be with my ex-husband, yet she is the individual in question has recently expressed a desire to leave the relationship, prompting a divorce and the dissolution of the family unit. This follows a period of deception, during which the individual in question secured a loan using the couple's home as collateral. The individual in question's actions were not anticipated, and the individual in question's subsequent infection with an STD was not foreseen. The individual in question's actions have resulted in significant distress for the other party, who feels a sense of inadequacy and self-loathing. The individual in question's actions have also had a detrimental impact on the couple's children, who require the support of both parents. The individual in question's actions have also resulted in significant financial strain, as the individual in question is unable to afford the costs associated with autism therapy independently. He continues to treat me however he pleases, even threatening to take the children away from me when I kicked him out of the house. I was scared that my children are everything to me and that I cannot handle the emotional toll anymore. I had postpartum depression with both pregnancies, and the second one was even worse. I was unable to work for over a year. I took care of my daughter all by myself, without any help from my ex-partner, who was too busy taking care of my son. I love my children. I am the only one who disciplines them because I love them. My ex-partner wants their love. He now provides them with whatever they desire. My daughter no longer wishes to be in my company. She informs me that she no longer desires my company. She is, after all, merely a child. However, I find this situation distressing. I have reached my limit with regard to the offense. I am therefore considering filing for a divorce, should he succeed in taking the children. I feel that I have been defeated. I have endeavored to conduct myself in an exemplary manner. I have worked assiduously, eschewing the temptation to take shortcuts, and remained faithful to my marriage, regardless of the challenges that I have faced. My actions have been motivated by a desire to serve my family. I have chosen to share my experience in the hope that it may offer some insight to others who may be facing similar difficulties.